How do we even begin to understand a piece of art from a world that's completely alien to our own? For decades, there was pretty much one main answer to that question, but then one thinker came along with a new idea that changed absolutely everything about how we read the past.
So let's just start with a simple question. Imagine you're sitting down with a play by Shakespeare. It's over 400 years old. How are you supposed to read it? I mean, what are you actually looking for when you turn those pages?
For the longest time, there were basically two camps. You had option A, treat the play like a perfect self-contained puzzle. The only thing that matters are the words right there on the page. Or you had option B, treat it like an archaeological dig. You hunt for clues about the world it came from, the politics, the culture, what people were anxious about.
And for a huge chunk of the 20th century, that first option, just focusing on the text itself, was king. That was the gold standard. But then a totally new approach came on the scene. It didn't just pick the other side. It completely blew up the idea that you could even separate the art from its world in the first place.
Okay, so to really get just how revolutionary this was, we need to understand the old way of thinking. This was an approach that saw a work of art as something pure, something totally sealed off from the messy, complicated reality of history.
This approach was called New Criticism. The whole goal was to do a close reading of a text, to analyze every metaphor, every little paradox, all to show how it fit together in this perfect, unified whole. The author's life, the historical moment it was written in, nope, none of that mattered. The text was the only thing that counted. The new critics even had this really powerful metaphor for their idea. They said a literary text was a verbal icon. Think of it like a beautiful vase in a museum. You're supposed to admire its form, its structure, its beauty. You're not supposed to ask about the dusty, noisy workshop it came from.
But what if that dusty workshop is the most interesting part of the story? Well, that's the question that was posed by the literary critic Stephen Greenblatt.
Now, Greenblatt is a real heavy hitter. We're talking about one of the most important literary critics of the last 50 years. His career took him from Yale to Berkeley to Harvard, and his work would go on to completely reshape how we study not just literature, but culture itself.
Our guide for this journey is Mark Robson's book on Greenblatt, and it's in this body of work that Greenblatt developed an approach that would totally challenge that whole verbal icon way of thinking.
He called his new approach New Historicism. And this wasn't just another stuffy academic theory. It was a whole new practice, a new way of seeing the relationship between a text and the world it lives in.
And the difference is just stark. While New Criticism saw a text as a stable, unified object, New Historicism sees it as a field of force. It's not some quiet vase in a museum. It's more like a chaotic intersection where culture, history, and power are all colliding.
Greenblatt himself said the whole point was to erode the firm ground. I mean, what a great phrase. His approach attacks that clean, easy separation between the so-called literary foreground, the play itself, and the political background, the world it came from. For new historicists, you just can't have one without the other. They're all part of the same tangled, messy picture.
So this all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in practice? How do you really connect a text to its context in this new way? Well, it all starts by understanding how a culture creates meaning in the first place.
Greenblatt argues that every culture has what he calls a symbolic economy. Think of it like a marketplace, but instead of buying and selling goods, this is where a culture's signs, images, and stories get traded around. And just like in a real economy, their value isn't fixed. It changes depending on who's using them and why.
Let's use a modern example. Think about an image of Queen Elizabeth II. On a banknote, that picture means authority and economic stability. In a formal royal portrait, it signifies tradition and the power of the state. But when the punk band the Sex Pistols took that exact same image and slapped it on an album cover, it became a symbol of rebellion and anti-establishment anger. The image didn't change, but its value in the symbolic economy was completely turned on its head.
And what's really crucial here is that Greenblatt applies this same thinking to himself. He tells a story about a student who asked him if he, the critic, was standing at some safe, objective distance from the past, and his answer was a firm no. He argued that the critic is also part of history, shaped by their own culture and their own time. There's no escaping the symbolic economy for anyone.
So you see, Greenblatt's work wasn't just about reading old books in a new way. It was much bigger than that. He gave us a whole new toolkit for understanding how culture itself actually works.
And a key tool in that kit is a concept he called self-fashioning. It's this idea that we build our identities not out of thin air, but from the cultural materials that are available to us. So think of a courtier in the Renaissance reading manuals on how to speak and act. Or think about how we all fashion our online personas today, using the language and styles of whatever social media platform we're on. We are all constantly shaping ourselves, using the tools our culture gives us.
So with Greenblatt's toolkit, we can see that art isn't just some passive mirror that reflects history. It's an active participant in history. A play by Shakespeare doesn't just show us the past, it helps to create the past by circulating ideas, by challenging power, and by shaping how people saw their own world.
And this leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question. If every story is a field of force that's shaped by its context, what about the stories of our time? What are the invisible, cultural, political, and economic forces that are shaping the movies we watch, the news we read, and even the way we fashion our own identities right now?